We are going to have a great session here, and I know because I have met both of you before in a similar event in Europe a month times ago. So welcome to Steve Metcalf and to Jake. Is it Schwer? What is your surname?
Schwertel.
Schwertel.
Yeah, that's
German. Yeah.
You pronounce it way better than I do anyway. Both of you
it's like
were
a Pokemon character, Schwertel.
That's right.
Yeah, both of you are from Baldwin, and I think Baldwin is a well-known and recognized company, Steve. But I think that maybe some people will not really recognize you as being a software company. So, is that an assumption that you can recognize, or is that something that you meet also from somebody else, or how is that? How is that?
Oh, I think there's a lot of. I think the perception today, like most companies in our space, is that we're still very much hardware companies. We develop systems and technologies, and a lot of us are. Unless you were born as a software company in the space, doing MIS or something of that nature. You're not really thought of as a software company, but even aside from the IoT and Industry 4.0 group that's forming in Baldwin, that's really changing that story. Baldwin has a lot of companies now that it's acquired. And I'll go through this briefly in my presentation.
Yeah.
That do software that have a lot to do with workflow and automation on printing machines and defect detection and color control and so forth. And that's all software. It's algorithmic control. So in a way, we already have groups within Baldwin that are very much on the cutting edge of the absolute latest things you can do with software. And what we're doing with Baldwin Intelligence and what you'll see with IoT is extending that even further.
And Jake, I'm so happy that you're here, because the last time we met, I think that it was for me a little bit unprepared, so I didn't have time to look you up. I didn't know you because I think you were using Steve's login so there was like two Steves at the session at that time, right? But you are the guy that one of the persons that make this happen, right? How difficult is it to get things going and program things and make sure that things works? Because to many people, IoT is still like a pretty new thing.
Yeah, it's been a really interesting journey. I started with Steve several years ago now, working on the LED side of things, and we, kind of IoT was something that organically grew out of a real need that we saw internally first and externally as well, and it was seemingly very easy in concept and really difficult in execution, and we've kind of kept ironing out bugs in the implementation side of things, and we're really finally at a point where we can start to do the cool stuff, do the fun data analytics that actually starts to get people excited about stuff.
I was almost excited until you said data analytics, and I was like, wow.
We make it easy.
Well, one of the
I've got questions.
I'm sorry. Yeah, okay, but I just want one more thing.
I know, but I'm so excited. Sorry.
Okay, do it. Take it away.
No, you go ahead. But I'm just telling you, I make sure I get my time to have my questions.
Yeah, you will. No, yesterday we had a session with Tyler from Tilly Labs. And he gave an excellent presentation. You should replay it, because it gives you also some. For the audience, you should give you an idea about the potentials of IoT. What they have built is they do this in precision software that is like using AI for these kind of things. But they have built in a IoT connection to a Sund cutter. So basically, just for people to understand, that one of the things that you can do with IoT is that basically now the software communicates with the cutter and get feedback about how the cutter can operate in the best possible way. So it's not just in precision in relation to how much you can fill on a sheet, but also in relation to what is becomes most efficient in that process. And I think that in this time where everybody's talking about Industry 4.0 and smart factory, the promise of IoT is basically to make the printing companies way more efficient, right, Steve?
Oh, absolutely. It's. I think we're all moving into a world where Deborah, your reaction is, big, data. That's we were brought up and raised to sort of fear it in a way. I think in our generation, when you look at Jake's generation and the generations coming after him,
mine, you mean?
And yours.
Jake's mine.
Yeah.
I think he just said I'm old, but I'm just going
to. Anyway, but that this is big data is a field of not only is it an exciting field, it's a field of study you can get into, because if you think about the world around us and everything from our cars to our refrigerators, our TVs, they're all collecting data constantly, and they're emitting information, and that sort of forms the basis of this potential value proposition. Is what can you do with all that? What can you do? And as we relate it into manufacturing, and then further into printing, the process control, all the things that we were sort of in the dark on, I think are going to come to light through data and illumination of these of what's happening, and then beginning to develop the apps, so to speak, that can run on that data and start giving us more autonomous control and solve problems for our industry. So that's what's exciting about it. We're at this real beginning, this inflection point now where all this is possible, and we just need to get at it and and see what we can do. And that's kind of where we are, and we're super excited about some of the things we're bringing.
And it's so fascinating, right, Deborah?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, it's totally fascinating. So now I have a million geeky questions, but I'm just going to ask you one so you can get onto your presentation, which might actually be a good lead-in. So you guys are going to talk about interconnectivity of devices and Internet of Things, and it's a really fascinating thing, because in one way you're being reactive, right, and in one way you're trying to be proactive. And so how do you sit there and make decisions about what you want to try to get to talk to each other? And then how do you then convince the manufacturers to start embracing this to begin with, so you're not kind of following the elephant with an IoT shovel, so to speak?
Mm-hmm. Oh, great questions. You're right. There is an interplay of reactivity and then activity initiative. And to be honest, like most companies that have gotten themselves into IoT, that were making hardware and machines and so forth, there is a lot of reactivity. You have to, the new table stakes for most manufactured equipment, of new equipment, is it has to come with some kind of cloud connectivity, some kind of ability to usually to improve the service, the uptime equation. And so there was a lot of reaction. I think a lot of people have sort of been forced into it. But we took a step back and started looking at what's possible. What can we do beyond just, ensuring that, in our case, Baldwin supplies a lot of the core technology that goes into the machines, from LED UV curing systems to Corona surface treaters, to vision inspection cameras, and so, it's more than just the uptime of that equipment, which is still very important, but what else can we do? Because we have access to a lot of process data that's happening live in real time on the machine. And so that's sort of and then the only way you can really, develop this technology, in our view, I think my view, and I think Jake would share this view, is through an agile approach. You can't sit here today and say, okay, in 12 months, we're going to have this feature and this feature. A lot of it is creating the core, creating the foundation of the home, and then beginning, as you start assembling the elements, talking to your customers or clients and saying, what this might make sense over here. What do you think? Oh, that would solve a problem for me. And so it's being able to sort of incorporate that agile feedback. So we've organized the development of what we're doing with our IoT software into monthly sprints. So every month would bring, we start queuing up ideas and concepts that we know we'll need to attack. Some are going to be internal things that we know, everybody needs the electrical in the home, right, and the plumbing. But there's other things that we don't know yet. How are we going to lay out the room? Where are we going to put the pieces of equipment? So that's where we can have a lot of fun. And one of the things that we talked about back in September when we did a similar discussion here was we have a few customers that are going live beta with us on multiple products. So we're going to be able to pull just an incredible amount of process intelligence off the machines. And we're gearing up to basically their stories. What do they want to, unless it can solve a problem for them, it's limited in its use. But we don't believe that. We believe it can solve a huge amount of problems that the industry faces. And so that's kind of how I don't know, that was maybe a long-winded answer,
but that I have one question, then I think we should get started with the presentation, because as you say that it's not like you can say that, okay, we have this feature set in 24 months and then we, because you have the agile development kind of approach to things. But AMP is still not like a product that you can purchase right now, right? So when do you get to the point where you say, now we are ready to push the sales button?
Yeah, AMP is a lot more like an app that you'd find on your app store, where there's a version today, and it just keeps getting better and better and better. And so we actually have AMP running already for a number of customers that are using single.
Okay, so this is a product that's available now. That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's available now. It's actually and there's some interesting things that have happened even in the last month and a half since we last spoke. Where to answer one of the other questions is, do customers even know? Do our printing companies even know what IoT is? And the answer is they're finding out pretty fast, because some of their customers are asking them things that they can't do yet.
Cool.
And so there's nothing like a customer's customer. It's not like your customer to ask you to do something to get something rolling. And I'll give some examples of that, and how AMP is something that can be deployed immediately. So AMP's available. It will have more of the traditional official sort of launch, let's say, investment as we move closer to what we would think of as the future Drupa timeframe in April. But we're
and then you haven't said too much there, right?
There's no reason to keep it a secret, right now. So we're excited, and we have been working, actively with early customers on AMP and getting them amped, and you'll see a lot more coming in that regard.
Perfect.
So Morten, I'm going to jump behind the scenes now. Gentlemen, it was lovely speaking with you. I'll be manning the chat. If anybody has any questions, I'll flag them. And I actually won't see you at the end of the session, because I'm going to jump into the next one. But it was lovely talking to you, and thank you so much for sharing about the Internet of Things. Very fascinated.
Thanks, Deborah.
So guys, now we go into it. You have to do the screen sharing and the presentation of things. So as you have tried it before, why don't you just jump directly into it, and then we have a chat afterwards? Wouldn't that be perfect?
Yeah, so I think I've got it. I'm going to go into presentation mode. Can you still see?
We can see that. So I will turn off my camera and my microphone, but I will be listening during the entire session.
Great. Okay. Well, let's get started.
Sorry, Steve. I accidentally turned off your sound and camera, so please do that again. Yeah, stupid me. Sorry.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you. I'm sorry.
Hey, can you see me now?
Yeah, we can see you too. Thank you very much.
All right. So here we go. So basically, the topic is connecting devices from multiple machines, leveraging what a lot of people are sort of rolling up into this concept of Industry 4.0. The fourth industrial revolution, and then leveraging a key sort of stack technology that we call IoT, or Internet of Things. So thanks again for having us, Morten and INKISH, and off we go. Let me know if you see the slides building here. Is that coming across?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, great. So first of all, introductions. Who is Baldwin, and what is the Baldwin Intelligence Group, or as we sometimes call it, BIG? So we'll get into that in a second. Then we'll get into connecting devices, defining the problem. So if connecting devices is an opportunity, there probably should be a reason why we would go to the effort of doing it. So the first question is why, and then what's the problem we're trying to solve? But maybe that question would be better phrased as what if, and what if often would be, how does this help us save money or make money or become more efficient? Or maybe just become more popular. We don't quite know yet, but those are some of the questions we'll try to answer. And then we're creating a platform for this, and why does that matter? And why are we doing it? Why doesn't something already exist? And then lastly, we'll get into Q&A if there is any. So first, introductions. So this is me pre-COVID, pre-pandemic, before I had more of a beard. I'm Steve Metcalf. I'm the Chief Marketing and IoT Officer for Baldwin Technology. And we've done quite a few things in the past with INKISH, and just very excited to be here again. And with me is Jake Schwertel, who is our Head of Development for the Baldwin Intelligence Group, and also Head of Development for what we'll be introducing here as AMP. But first, quickly about Baldwin. Baldwin, as many people in print know, has been around for over 100 years. I think it's 102 years now, and really primarily known for automation in the print process. Baldwin was one of the inventors of some of the core technology that's now, basically, I wouldn't say take it for granted, but it's automated cleaning technology that's in every press in the world. That was something Baldwin invented. And as well as through acquisitions and other things, we've gotten into enhancement technology. So when you think about our business segments, we're in cleaning technology, spray, precision spray, and treatment of surfaces. We're into LED, UV, and IR drying. We're into inspection, register, color control. And of course, now we're into IoT analytics and intelligence. Baldwin's around the world, very global represented. We've got about 21 locations, and the primary industry is print, converting, packaging, textile finishing, film extrusion, and other industrial. We're also part of, it's worth mentioning, we're part of a $3.5 billion Barry Wehmiller group, which is a lot of other companies involved in packaging and related areas. So it's quite a big family of companies, and but we're really focused on industrial process and enhancement technology at Baldwin. So quickly looking at sort of the history of innovation, in 1918, William Guggenheimer was the one who invented the first automated washing devices that went into offset presses. And that quickly, as you can see, grew the company all the way to the turn of the century around the world, as that technology became, in today, Baldwin is the leader in automated cleaning technology in printing and industrial machines around the world. And you can see how that was sort of the first phase of growth of Baldwin. And then around the turn of the century, Baldwin went on acquisitions, and some of the more notable ones here, Nordson UV in 2010, which is based in the UK, and later in 2017, with the acquisition of Air Motion Systems, my former company came together to form AMS Spectral UV, which is one of the top UV and LED UV technology providers around the world. Then meanwhile, they acquired web printing controls, PC Industries, and Quadtech in 2017, which together formed what we now call Baldwin Vision, which is using very high-tech cameras and other equipment to measure inline color, do registration, do inspection, defect detection. And so it's quite an exciting group that's formed there. And then Allbrandt in 2017 was a company that was doing a lot. It's a German company that is most known for Corona surface treatment, and that fits nicely with a lot of the process touch points that we have. And so today, Baldwin is really made up of three sort of main segments or technology groups: the Vision, which, as I mentioned, color control, register control, inspection and waste removal, color and ink management, and web vision. Precision, which is more the classic Baldwin, which is the surface treatment, surface cleaning, precision spray application, fluid temperature control, and web enhancement. And then AMS Spectral, which is LED and UV curing, conventional UV, IR hot air drying, and lamps and components. And then what we've added to this, sort of undergirding the whole thing, is this intelligence group that we're going to be spending our time here today talking about. So the data acquisition, analytics, IoT, and Industry 4.0. And so the best way to sort of jump into it is kind of throw up an example of a machine. And this is if you think about the world of packaging, this is where a lot of process control and quality control really comes to the forefront. And there's so many touch points that a company like Baldwin really has on a machine like this, this nice Comexi press, which is a CI Flexo, probably producing, flexible pouches or bags somewhere in the world. And, everything from Corona treatment of the surface of the film, typically going through to curing, UV LED curing or hot air drying, to registration and inspection and color management. So the whole sort of gamut of our product technology can touch a machine like this. And so it got us to thinking, what if? What if you could begin to capture all the data generated by your machine in real time? And it's not just one machine, but multiple machines. What if you could compare the live information happening on the machine with historical data, and you could visualize it together? You can use it live information to contrast historical averages, for example, or job averages. And what if you could begin to understand the root cause of problems that you may have long suspected were there, but couldn't see because the data was missing from the picture? And if you could start to solve problems, what if you could solve them if you could compare and contrast your process across the machines, across different vendors? Not all converters and printing companies always go with the same machine vendor, and they go with different vintages. But what if you could begin to compare these? What if you could compare operator performance, plant performance, et cetera? And what if you could start to identify very tiny trends that could have an enormous or outsized impact on your production quality? And what if you could use that information to eliminate unplanned downtime altogether? What if you could use it to clearly identify the causes of waste before it occurred? So it's not always machine downtime. It's production that was wasted because there was a defect to it. There was defects, or there were in the UV world there could be adhesion issues. There could be other things that cause large amounts of product to come back to us, or come back to our customers in the form of claims and returns, or even in-plant waste before it gets out the door. So what if you could identify these sources and resolve them before they even happen? And then as you start looking at defects, because we'll also experience defects, what if we begin to understand the relationship of defects to things like the surface treatment, the energy going down on the material, the color, the inks, the pressure of the machine, the temperature, the speed, the drying power? What if all these things were related, and we could begin to understand how to control them and how they related to each other? And what if we could then go further and connect and merge information from our machines with environmental data from our factories, such as the ambient temperatures, the dew points, even conditions, air quality, for example, around the machines? And what if we could begin to measure all that? And that is how we got to AMP. So what is AMP? AMP is a platform that's coming from Baldwin, which stands for a lot of things. And I'll start with the A's. It stands for things, sort of an agile approach, an advanced platform, aggregation, the concept of aggregating information, augmenting, sort of the idea that you can augment a process with data to make better decisions for operators. Getting ultimately to a point where we can run something autonomously is one of our goals. And obviously accelerating sort of time to value, accelerating the ability to produce and repeat a process consistently. So that applies to machines, and it applies to process, and there you have AMP. So why AMP? Why did we do this? Isn't there something you can just buy off the shelf? Well, the problem is that there are. If you think of Internet of Things, and if anybody goes out and Googles IoT, industrial IoT, you're going to find a huge realm of platforms, from the largest technology companies in the world to many of the people that provide the control electronics for machines. Everybody's got some kind of an IoT platform. Some are expensive, some are free to use. They all have different business models, and they're all developed all over the world. But if you look at some common things, because we've been in this journey, our journey with IoT began over 4 years ago, and it started with looking out there at platforms that could exist that could start to do the things that we were looking to do. And what we quickly found is that most of these IoT platforms are very industry generic. They are designed for everything from retail to agriculture to oil refining to general manufacturing, and so they don't give you a lot of out of the box sort of ability to map to the process that we know it. And we were obviously interested in print and converting. they have, generally speaking, poor flexibility. They can be very rigid. And so when you're looking for something, a new capability, if it doesn't exist within the platform, you're going to have to wait till somebody develops it or pay somebody to develop it. So they really didn't have a lot of flexibility to customize themselves to what we're trying to do. They're often proprietary and expensive, so there can be hidden fees. Some of the largest tech companies in the world will charge you ahead of time for licensing software before you're even generating any value from it. So there's that issue. And then they often require costly development cycles of projects. You have to customize them, hook them up to your devices. So software skills, consulting, et cetera, things that most printing companies don't necessarily have an abundance of in-house. And a lot of the OEMs that we talk to don't have a lot of these in-house either. And there can be a complicated learning curve for end users. So, today's, tech environment, if something is not intuitive, if it's unintuitive, you're not going to see adoption. So today you need technology that is literally so easy to understand and use that there's no learning curve, or at least it's as minimal as possible. And so there's a huge emphasis in AMP of making this intuitive, of you don't have to go through an extensive amount of training. So how can it be done better? Well, with AMP, we bring some advantages. One, it's a new IoT platform. It's designed specifically for the print process in mind. It's also designed to be machine, vendor, and device agnostic. So it doesn't matter what brand of machine or who supplied the machine or what vintage the machine is or what kinds of devices are on there. In theory, we can AMP anything. So it can be useful to understand differences between machines that one may own in one plant or across different sites. It's also, and it has to be, built on open, secure, open source technology. So it's highly secure, and it's leveraging the most advanced open source technology components out there for IoT type software. Its architecture is based on microservices, which allows it to very easily flex and scale and be mobile. So we can quickly port the architecture if as winners and losers emerge in sort of the IoT arms race out there. So we're not beholden to anything proprietary with AMP. AMP comes native with an ability to structure its data, the data that's being collected, and we'll get into this in a second, to make it make sense for printing, packaging, and converting. And unless you can do that, it's not going to provide a lot of value. And it connects not just the presses, but really any device that has data that can be connected in the environment, can augment information that's coming from the press or the equipment on the press. And so AMP has the ability to deliver IoT insights very quickly, because a lot of the devices, certainly the devices that come from Baldwin, will be pre-amped. They already have AMP built in. So the moment you add them to your machine, you'll begin to start adding value and streaming data through AMP. And it leverages a lot of the print process know-how. So Baldwin has numerous professionals around the world that have spent years in various aspects of the print process, understanding things like cleaning and UV curing and energy surface treatment, et cetera. And AMP allows these professionals to get much more involved and closer to what our customers are doing with process, and can deliver process know-how a lot faster through the augmentation of the data. And AMP can be used natively. It has a huge array and growing array of data analytics tools, and we'll get into those here in a second. But it can also be used as middleware to sort of push and pull information. So we've actually gotten requests from others, customers that already have an IoT platform, and they want to use AMP as sort of middleware to bring data into these other platforms. And it certainly can be used as sort of a set of pipes, if you will, in that regard. So AMP can do a lot of things. And I'm going to let Jake sort of go quickly over the AMP IoT platform, sort of the architecture side of it. And I think this is the only sort of technical slide, but we're happy to take technical questions from anybody that may have them.
Yeah, great. Yeah, so we had a bit of a genesis moment 18 months or so ago when we decided we were going to transition away from an off-the-shelf platform to a in-house built IoT platform. And so we decided, what are the kind of key points of this that's going to differentiate it, that's going to make it really useful down the road. And so we ended up building kind of what you see here. So AMP is first and foremost a secure, a fault-tolerant, a distributed IoT platform. It's used for data aggregation, it's used for data dissemination, and for analytics. And we're specifically looking at the printing and converting industry. And so walking through kind of what makes up the anatomy of AMP, the first one is flexible data ingestion endpoints. So at the very start, Deborah talked about, how do we get all these manufacturers up onto our platform? And that's a great question. We are looking at the kind of standard, open, and common methods to collect data. So that's HTTP, that's MQTT. We also support some of the more fringe ones like NATS and CoAP. The idea is no matter how your device is creating and sending data, we can absorb it. We can make use of it for you very simply. It's a durable data pipeline from the edge device to the database. That means that once your data hits the AMP cloud, it's never going to be lost. It can be replayed and it's kept there forever. We have built out an extensive web native tool set for data visualizations and analytics. That means from any browser on your phone, your tablet, or desktop, you can access your data. You can view the full history of data in a very intuitive and simple performative way. We have a full DevOps tool set kind of behind the scenes to make sure that AMP is always running healthy and to support our users quickly. We have administrative tools that allow you to partition users, machines, customer groups, locations, kind of all these standard set of admin tools you've come to expect, as well as monitoring their usage. And I think most importantly, AMP is available anywhere. Primarily, we have a platform as a service through Baldwin Intelligence Group, and that's what most of our customers use. But we have options for self-hosted deployment, either on-premise or in the cloud. It's very portable, it's very small and lightweight in actuality, so it's easy to move around to whatever is most convenient for a given customer.
Great, thanks, Jake. So let's kind of pop it up a level. So AMP all the things, amping is something we can use to connect to anything via the platform. And so there's sort of 4 major steps here. Jake, do you want to go through what they are?
Yeah, totally. So a lot of people think that once you have kind of some idea of what you want to do with a device, that you can just immediately jump to the kind of useful feature. And that's not quite the case, but we have a pretty standard formula to get you to that point. So the first thing is data must exist. There needs to be some sort of sensor that gets the data, whether that's a pressure transducer, a flow rate sensor, whatever that might be. Beyond that, the data must be accessible. So just because it's on a local device doesn't mean we can actually get to it. So the device has to be connected to the internet in some way, shape, or form, and has to be able to transmit to the AMP cloud. Once the data gets to the AMP cloud, it needs to, of course, be usable. So that means the data can't be overly noisy. It needs to be easily understood and synthesized. And then once we have data that's understood and where we need it to be, that data needs to be put into as much context as possible. So one data point alone generally doesn't provide a ton of useful information. The more context you have around what that data does and the surrounding data points, the more value you can get out of it. So maybe instead of just the water temperature of a system, you have the ambient temperature and humidity of the factory, which gives you more context to understand what's actually going on within the system.
Yeah, and something to mention here too is that there's AMP. We have a device connection guide or a systems development kit, if you will, on how to AMP any device, and obviously it's being applied to all the Baldwin Technology products today, and but can be really applied to the press itself, the machine itself, in many ways is a giant sensor and has a lot of information that it's emitting. So integrating that in, putting it in context is part of what we do with AMP. And most of the time, it can be done relatively quickly as we work with our customers. And we'll give some examples of that here shortly as we're working through a few of them right now. I'm going to give a little bit of a glimpse of the AMP platform. And when we talk about AMP, sort of what do you actually interact with? What do you see if you're using AMP for visualization and analytics? And A customer that has access to AMP for their machine would start by logging in and getting sort of a view of their sites potentially and the different machines they have running and where they're located. Usually the goal would be as the most visual way possible, the way they view their machines. And what's happening here, and you'll see a little bit of an example of navigation. We'll have what we call the AMP Machine Navigator, which in this case, somebody's got an OMET narrow web flexo press that's producing labels, and you'll be able to view the machine really the way that you see them, the way your team sees them, and then navigate production status that they generate very easily. And you can view them anywhere you are. So because it's web native, whether it's on an iPhone or a Samsung, or whether it's on a PC browser, you'll be able very quickly to get online and have a look at machines, and which is really especially important in today's pandemic world, where most of us can't always be physically present with where the production's running. The next part of AMP is what we call process radar, where we're actually looking at different aspects of the machine. We're able to, if you see at the bottom there, sort of navigating around the machine, looking at different units. And each time you select a station of the machine, the relevant equipment or process information is being gathered that feeds into sort of a bigger picture on the machine. So you can view aggregate data across the entire machine and process, such as job, operator, speed, shift, some cases pressure, tension, the machine information, factory information. And then in each individual area, you can see things like corona treatment or UV data, color, ink type, inspection, cleaning, etc. And then in the environment, you can see things if they've been hooked up through AMP, humidity, temperature of things, aspects of your ink, your coatings, your rollers, your water temperature, etc. So there's a lot that can be brought into AMP, and we'll continue to build this sort of view of process radar. And then you have on the next level, you have device radar. So now you're drilling into individual devices, and this could be an example of going into an LED system where you're starting to compare, and I'll mention this too, this radar concept, which is one of the unique features of the AMP platform, where you can start to view data across different channels. So as you look at a device like an LED unit, you're often thinking of it in terms of its current and voltage and water flow and temperature. And so those are basic health things, but you can see how they deviate. So the live view is the plot in green. And in AMP, green generally means things are running well. In the blue plot is a reference plot. It's an historical reference. Could have been, since the day started, or since the beginning of the shift, or it could be all-time average. So you can start to see where your process is beginning to deviate from thresholds or sort of historical references that you've set up. So yeah, the goal here is with AMP Device Radar is to be able to uncover insights or look for trouble spots quickly. And this is where the telemetry of the data from a device begins and gets merged in. And as Jake mentioned earlier, gets put into context. So one of the most important things we can do with AMP is develop sort of deep analytics. And we have a feature called Deep Chart, which is really sort of the engineering level analytics tool for surfacing data that's happening on any device on the machine. So you can use this to drill into data across machines and devices, or within a machine itself, and you can see the whole process live as well as historical. And the Deep Chart's only as good as its sort of navigational ability. And so one of the things that we provide in Deep Chart is something called infinite zoom that allows us to change the timing, the average, the granularity of the data. And there's a lot of technology that goes into AMP to make this happen. But one of the things that we want to avoid is people getting inundated with their own data. So you need to be able to kind of very quickly navigate it and look for the things you're looking for, whether it's quality control information or whether it's an alert or an abnormality, and be able to quickly navigate that. So there's a lot going into this idea of Deep Chart. And then, as I mentioned, this zoom feature, which you can very quickly grab a sort of time series of data and go into it quickly to look for something that might have happened When viewing a large amount of data, this sort of auto aggregation feature is very important. So these are some of the core elements of AMP that allow sort of visualization and navigation of data that's happening on machines. And you can really compare any piece of data that we've collected from AMP, whether it's from the Baldwin equipment, whether it's from the press itself, whether it's from ambient sensors that we've set up. And then with data views, one of the things that's important is looking at the information the way that our customer would want to see it. So we're going to provide an ability for anybody, whether it's a quality control manager, an operator, an owner of a company, to basically set up the views of the data that they care about, and to give them an idea of maybe it's just one element of the process. Maybe they want to add this to share it with other people in their organization, but it really allows a highly customizable view of the world. And this is one of the things that's very hard to do with some of the off-the-shelf IoT solutions that are out there, that we thought would be incredibly important to bring usability for AMP to our customers. And then, of course, data rules. So one of the things we can start to do is defining rules and collections of rules that come together to alert us. So we're, if we're not always logged into AMP to see what's going on, we just want to know when a certain threshold has been hit. So maybe it's a temperature or flow rate threshold on a device. When we know that that's above or below a certain value, we want to know about it as quickly as possible, and we can, of course, send intelligent alerts in any way possible, whether it's text messages, whether it's emails. We could even set up devices that buzz you on your wrist, if that's a way you want to get information. But the ability to set these rules and then also create rules of rules, that are combinations of things that are happening at a device level, but might also be comparing them with aggregated information or KPIs, both live and historical. If something happens that is outside of an average that's occurred, we want to know about that too. So this rules engine within AMP is going to be very powerful, and it's very visual to set up and manage. And then, of course, pushing data beyond just the sort of if we want to push data out to all the other platforms that exist in most of our customers' facilities, whether it's third-party platforms or spreadsheets. It could be other IoT platforms, could be to PLCs, MIS, ERP, CRM, Power BI from Microsoft is becoming quite popular now to use for data analytics. So it's really almost unlimited. And one of the things we're excited about is a Zapier integration. And for those that aren't familiar with Zapier, it's one of the most useful emerging middleware platforms out there. It's sort of a do-it-yourself middleware platform that anybody can subscribe to. It's cloud-based, and it already has many integration hooks into the most popular systems in the market, such as Salesforce for CRM or SAP for ERP. So with AMP, pushing and pulling data is going to be as easy as possible. So what else?
Steve, just be aware of the time, please.
Oh yeah, I guess we're almost, I think, to the end of the basic presentation.
Okay, perfect.
Let's talk about sort of with AMP what's coming next. And in 2021, I think this year 2020 has really been sort of nose down, getting AMP prepared, and first of all the Baldwin Technology products that our customers experience every day will deliver with AMP IoT built in, so the connectivity, the preamped nature of them. So there's really not any developments other than putting them on your presses. And one of the obvious ways of doing that is by integrating the Baldwin equipment onto OEM machines. We can accelerate and augment the kind of information that they're collecting into the machines. And then we're working with some device and software partners already that can receive AMP. They can receive SDKs for custom development, and that's being done on a priority basis, where we see the need from our customers, and we're talking to some of them right now where they have some needs. And then we've got select sort of end customers receiving early access to AMP IoT on their machines. In fact, one of them is here. It's not far from us here in the Minneapolis area. And it's a label manufacturer where they're putting AMP on a Mark Andy Flexopress, and they're integrating both the LED UV technology that's on the machine with a corona treater and with a defect detection camera. So we're being able to pull all that information together and then use it to really start solving problems that typically would exist for label manufacturers, label converters. And so very excited that's happening right now, and will form the basis for several other early customers that are looking at sort of a packaging sort of AMP concept. Anyways, that's where we are, and I think Morten, I'll turn it back to you for Q&A. And we do have some more information out on our website. There's a link here that could be useful, and we'll continue to add more information to it as we go.
Thank you very much, Steve. As usual, it was a great presentation. I can't help think about how excited I am about the future, because I mean, it's quite unpredictable, right? That's for sure. But every time you take a step in a certain direction, technology-wise, if enough people follow that path, it will eventually take place. Can't help think about how many people have been wondering about JDF as standard in printing and binding, and it's not really out there 100% yet, right? And now we are introduced to new technology. We have actually quite a few questions here. So one of the questions I have before we get into that, do you think the adoption rate of IoT, also with your platform and things like that, do you think that is something that will go faster than we have seen with other technologies?
Yeah, I really think that we're still in many ways having conversations with customers like, what are you talking about? IoT Industry 4.0. Why do we care? Why do we see this this feature emerging in your products? And in some respects, a lot of our own people don't even really understand the value of it yet. But in the hands of people that know what they can do with data, we're getting examples of customers that are being asked, as I mentioned earlier, by their own customers for information about what's going on. How is color running live on press for the job that they expect to have in their warehouse, in a week from now, knowing that the defects are under control. And really the only way to offer this kind of information to your customer is to have a platform like AMP where that information can be disseminated out. And
so the answer could be yes, this will be rolled out faster than previously new ideas.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing is that and this has really just happened in the last few months, and it may be partially fueled by the pandemic, where traditional sort of press checks and things like that, with customers coming in and looking at the quality of the product before they hit sign off. They want to do it. They want to do it digitally now. They want to understand. They're not going to go travel to the manufacturer's site. They're not going to do a press check, but they still want that assurance and that information that quality is running, that whatever's arriving to their stock room to package their products is going to hit all the requirements, with a surety, and they're going to be alerted to defects, and so that's a new world that we're just starting to see demand coming from some customers. A lot of this is going to be eliminating waste, in the production process, solving for why is it when operator A runs the machine, we get a different result than operator B, or why are we running the identical ingredients to the process, the identical materials, identical inks, identical coatings,
and still see different results.
And why is something still different? And trying to solve for those things that have often been issues out there plaguing our customers that are looking to get more and more efficient, reduce more waste, and eliminate sort of the variability in the process.
Yeah, I'd say
let's jump into some of the questions here. We have Robert Godwin, who was also presenting Monday, and he's a quite bright guy, so pay attention to his question. I think he is asking the first question. He has, I think, 4 or 5 questions. His first question is, how much invasion of privacy does IoT present? Are there controls on the user side that controls what is shared and what is not?
Yeah, I guess to speak to it technically to some degree. So we are very cautious, as are most of our customers, about the security and the privacy of data, and we understand that's kind of a big step for a lot of people. moving kind of outside of the 4 factory walls. So along the entire path that the data travels, we take a lot of precautions to make sure that everybody is safe and private and secure. So we have a VPN hardware unit at the edge device for all of our Baldwin products that keeps any traffic from coming in to the factory walls, basically, right? It keeps any bad traffic from coming in, and it only lets very specific traffic out. The data, when it hits the AMP cloud, it's anonymized, and it doesn't contain any personal information that can be used to identify anybody to kind of conform to GDRP. And so this tool is made to provide insights into data to the people who care about it and who can use it. And we've really designed it to provide that and only that. We don't. We're very cautious about the security of it.
Great answer. Next one, also from Robert. Who is the recipient of the information collected?
Yeah, and again, similarly, the Baldwin cloud for Baldwin products is where the data is warehoused. So that is Baldwin servers. And we understand that if you own a Baldwin product, you also essentially own that data as well. And so we have common interfaces to get that data out if you want to keep it for your own records.
Okay, so that means that data collected from AMP is not automatically shared with Baldwin?
It is housed in Baldwin servers, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So you have access to them. I mean, if you have the bad will, you could access them and you could do analysis on data that doesn't belong to you, because you basically say that the data belongs to your customer, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just to add to that answer a little bit. We have customers that have a lot of sensitive information as well in their production process. So we have options to truncate, the Baldwin access. So we only see data that, the data exists for them as long as they want it, but we can view it in a time horizon that allows us.
Okay. So you could example, if you have like a collaborative issue that you need to solve, then you could basically offer that access to that specific time, that specific machine, right, or that specific whatever you need in order to make sure. Yeah,
exactly.
okay.
We've had conversations with customers that were sensitive to that issue and wanted. They obviously understand the value. So we use AMP internally to provide, remote support and troubleshooting of our systems, and it's actually part of our warranty. We can offer a better warranty with AMP turned on than we can with it turned off, right?
But Steve, sorry to interrupt you. It's just because we are a little bit short in time. But when you say that, I think that makes sense. But when we started talking about AMP, you and I spoke about maybe 5-6 months ago or something like that. I think that one of the KPIs with AMP is the vendor agnostic side to it, right? Mm-hmm. So when you talk about what you can do on Baldwin products, that is of course something that you can control. But even that you offer SDKs, and even if you offer these kind of services also to other vendors and to subscribers to the SDKs, I mean, you can't really control that part of it, can you?
Right. In that case, if we've gone through a process where Baldwin has signed an agreement with a company, we can, that gives us one degree of control. If it's a custom development that our customer wants to do, then that's really the information they're going to use in their process.
But just to understand that, so that means that if you subscribe to the SDK and use the AMP as a service as part of your own products, does that not mean that you have still the data transferred to Baldwin servers? And I mean, if essentially that, I mean, because I think that one of the things, and I think it's a very good question, because I mean, you can ask yourself, why should Samsung be interested in what you have in your refrigerator? But it could be the same question in relation to, for example, when we had like these articles about how Heidelberg, for example, with Prenect is connecting, taking advantage of the OEE gathered from the most efficient of their customers to the least efficient of their customers, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, so this is a question. Unfortunately, I don't have time for that because I need at least 2 more questions answered. I hope we can get back to this. I want to hear about it.
Right. We do have some more answers. It does bring up a whole nother realm. Is do people trust putting their information on a CRM platform like Salesforce? They're taking for the information that many companies use. So that it's some interesting topics.
I totally get that one. The next one is I don't think that can be answered shortly, but I would like you to give a short answer, Jake. Robert is asking, how does AMP differ from an API?
Sure. So
I think I know it, but I would like to hear your sayings about it.
Yeah, well, okay. So I guess it's important to start with what the definition of an API is, right? Which is just a public interface, an app's public interface. So AMP is an API is part of AMP is kind of the short answer here. It's kind of the square and rectangle debate. So AMP offers a number of APIs for different functionality to, like Steve talked about, export to third-party services or to export data directly to the customer, as well as to ingest data. So AMP has a number of APIs, but what AMP actually is a combination of a bunch of different software, including APIs, but including also data analytics and processing and warehousing and all of that. So that's what AMP is.
It's great that you answered this way, because I was just about to say that APIs, if you're working with APIs, you would probably need to work with each vendor, each software platform, each anything. And I think that one of the advantages I understand from AMP is basically that being vendor agnostic means that you have, like, you can quote it like being the black box in between all the devices. So you speak one language and then you can communicate out, right?
That's right. And with our APIs, we have taken a lot of care to be standardized and open to basically what the industry is currently doing. And so you'll find that just about any device out there or any software can really easily connect to AMP.
Perfect. Guys, your LinkedIn have already been shared by Deborah. We have the next session, which is a kind of extension to this one, because Horizon from Japan has developed something they call IceLink, which is maybe on a different level, but similarities, because they are also using the IoT to schedule maintenance, to monitoring execution of equipment and process, etc., etc. So we have Bob Flint from Standard Finishing Systems in the US with us in just 3 minutes. So, guys, I thank you very much for your continuing support of INKISH and the platform and what we do, and I appreciate your time. It was a pleasure as usual. Thank you very much, guys.
Morten, thank you. It was a pleasure again being back with you.
Yep, thanks so much.
Great.
There's a process that ultimately is kind of a systems development kit that not only is Baldwin following in amping our own products, but that can be and is being made available to our customers and can amp other things that are going into the data acquisition business. So, Jake, you want to talk about this quickly?
Yeah, of course. So the formula to build value in AMP is really simple.